Right, we're moving on to the next topic, which is the theories of evolution. Okay, now evolution is the process of gradual development from a simple unorganized condition into a complex organized form. The process of evolution is continuous, taking place even now, The concept of organic evolution postulates that organisms that appeared earlier were simpler. Early organisms have gradually changed into existing complex organisms. All organisms are interrelated because of common origin. Four main theories to explain the theories of evolution are Lamarck's theory of inheritance of acquired character, Darwin's theory of natural selection, mutational theories by Hugo de Vries, and modern concepts of evolution. Lamarckism, or Lamarck's theory. In 1809, French biologist Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, 1744 to 1829, explained his theory in his famous book Philosophie zoologique. He was originally a botanist, but in later life became a zoologist. Lamarckism is popularly known as theory of inheritance of acquired characters or theory of use and disuse organs. Propositions of Lamarckism are internal vital force. It tends to change the size and form of different organisms, generally making them larger and more complex. Effects of environment. Variations in the environmental factors such as temperature, light, pressure, humidity, wind, etc. affect the living things and produce changes in their bodies. Right? Internal vital force. It tends to change the size and form of different organisms, generally making them larger and more complex, is one among the propositions of Lamarckism. The other one is the effects of environment. Variations in the environmental factors, such as temperature, light, pressure, humidity, wind, etc., affect the living things and produce changes in their bodies. And new needs. New needs focuses on new needs to produce a new movement in the body that brings about modification of existing organs and formation of new organs. It is also known as doctrines of desires or appetency. Use and disuse of organs. Constant use of an organ makes it more efficient and specialized. Disuse of an organ brings about degeneration. Inheritance of acquired character. The traits acquired due to the above reasons passed on to the next generation. After several generations, it gives rise to a new species. Long neck and high forelimbs of a giraffe. Developed due to the stretching for obtaining foliage from trees when ground vegetation becomes sparse is a prime example of Lamarckism. Lamarckism cannot be accepted fully. Weisman from 1883 to 1885 and Payne 1911 criticized the theory of inheritance of acquired characters. New Lamarckism is an attempted revival of Lamarckism by modifying it and finding evidences for direct effect of environment on germ cells and the effect of somatic cells on germ cells. Features of Neo-Lamarckism are theory, Lamarck's views plus new facts. It does not include factors like inner will and use and disuse of organs, etc. It differentiates between somatic cells and germ cells. It holds only the variations affecting germ cells that are inheritable. It holds that these variations are inheritable. The theory of germplasm, Weisman 1892, states that inheritance of characters from the patients to offspring is mediated through germplasm, which continues after generation. Hence, it is known as the theory of continuity or germplasm. Lamarckian postulate of use and disuse of organs is supported by a fairly developed and strong perception of blacksmith, elongated limbless body of snake, bottom dwelling flatfish whose larvae have normalized while an adult's eyes migrate to one side of the head. Some other examples of use and disuse of organs are lengthening of neck of giraffe, rudimentary eyes of cave dwellers, vestigial organs of living animals, webbed feet of swimming birds. And the Summers' experiments on white mice, Kemmerer's experiment on Proteus organus, and Tower's experiments on potato beetle prove the effect of environment and temperature bringing about inheritance of acquired characters. The greatest blow to Lamarckism came from the work of the German scientist August Weismann. Neo-Lamarckians believe that only those characters, whatever be the origin and nature, that could affect germplasm are heritable, and others are not. Objections to Lamarckism. August Weismann conducted experiments of cutting the tails of rats for 80 generations, but tailless rats were never born. Nose-boring and ear-boring Indian women to wear ornaments has been in practice for several generations, but this acquired character is not inherited. Similarly, circumcision practiced by some communities for the last several centuries is not inherited. The small feet of Chinese women confined by using wooden shoes are never inherited. Similarly, the strong muscles of an athlete wrestler are not inherited. Darwinism or Darwin's theory. Darwinism is a term coined for the explanation offered by Darwin for the origin of species by natural selection. Darwin in 1809 to 1882 and Alfred Russel Wallace, 1823 to 1913. This theory is also known as Darwin-Wallace theory. Darwinism was published in 1859 in the book The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. The theory of natural selection is based on the following factors: rapid multiplication and limited food and space, which leads to struggle for existence and variations, which lead to natural selection or survival of the fittest. Natural selection and inheritance of useful variations over many generations, which leads to formation of new species. The origin of species by means of natural selection. The theory of natural selection is based on the following factors: rapid multiplication and limited food and space, which leads to struggle for existence and variation, which leads to natural selection or survival of the fittest. Natural selection and inheritance of useful variation over many generations, which leads to formation of new species. The struggle for existence is threefold for every individual. Interspecific struggle that is between the individuals of the same species. This is the keenest form of struggle, as the needs of the individuals of the same species are identical. Interspecific struggle. This is the struggle between the individuals of different species. The struggle is illustrated by the efforts of a snake for catching a rat and the rat for escape. Environmental struggle. This is the struggle of the animal with the changes in environmental factors such as heat, cold, drought, flood, storm, famine, light, etc. Evidence of Darwinism can be shown by entomophily. Many pollinating insects have a prebocious length exactly matching the position of nectary in the flower. This can develop gradually through natural selection. Industrial melanism, appearance of dark or melanic forms in some organisms, like moths in the industrial regions, is the appropriate example of natural selection. Inheritance of small variations, perpetuation of vestigial organs, specialization of organs go against Darwinism. Darwinism passed these two phases. Romantic period, for about 40 years from the enunciation of theory of natural selection by Darwin. Agnostic period of criticism for natural selection for about 30 years due to continuous variations, pangenesis, and arrival of the fittest. Darwin's theory fails to explain the inheritance of small variations, perpetuation of vestigial organs, and overspecialization of organs. Darwin was British naturalist. In 1831, at the age of 22, he was appointed upon a war service ship, a British government HMS Beagle. Alfred Russel Wallace, 1823 to 1913, also traveled widely. Evolutionary ideas similar to those of Darwin developed independently in Wallace's mind, but Darwin and Wallace jointly propounded the theory of natural selection. The thinking of both Darwin and Wallace was greatly influenced by essays on principles of population written by T.R. Malthus in 1798. Malthus, in his essays on population, has said that food increases in arithmetic progression while the number of animals increases in geometric progression. I repeat, food increases in arithmetic progression while the number of animals increases in geometric progression. Darwin's thinking was also influenced by Charles Lyell's 1832 essays on principles of geology. Darwin's theory is based on the following 5 principles: overproduction, struggle for existence, variations in the inheritance, survival of fittest, natural selection, species formation. Continuity of existence of the fittest was called survival of fittest by Herbert Spencer, while Darwin called it natural selection. Darwin and Wallace published a joint paper titled Origin of Species in 1858. Some drawbacks of Darwin's theory are: he considered minute fluctuating variations as principal factors. He did not distinguish between somatic and germinal variations. One major criticism against Darwin's theory was his failure to give a satisfactory explanation for variation. Neo-Darwinism is a refinement of original theory of natural selection to remove objections. Neo-Darwinism have the following important features. It is a modification of Darwinism in the light of genetic research. It incorporates causes of variation. It considers only genetic variations, mutations, inheritable and raw material for evolution. Units of evolution is a population in this concept. Natural selection is referred to as differential reproduction, leading to changes in gene frequency. It considers reproductive isolation as an essential factor in specialization. According to Neo-Darwinism, both mutations and natural selection are responsible for evolutions. The chief Neo-Darwinians are Weismann, Mental, and De Vries. Neo-Darwinians believe that the main causes of difference in members of a species are difference in genetic pattern and influence of different environments. Resistance of mosquitoes to DDT and sickle cell anemia are also examples of natural selection. The letterbook replica plating technique demonstrated by adaptation to be a result of the pre-existing mutant forms of bacteria. It supported Darwinism and illustrated that the introduction of penicillin, a change in the environment, gave a selective advantage to that already present penicillin-resistant bacteria over the penicillin-sensitive bacteria. Supplementary theories of Darwinism are artificial selection, sexual selection, and theory of pangenesis. To explain the various non-adaptive variations found is in domesticated plants and animals. He proposed the concept of artificial selection. Artificial selection is practiced for better crop varieties and in domestic animals by selective breeding. Selective selection. Secondary sexual characters do not play any significant role in the struggle for existence. Darwin concluded that modes of secondary sexual characters are beyond the purview of natural selection. His theory of sexual selection is based on these assumptions. In general, males are more abundant than the females, so there is competition among males for females. Objection to Darwinism, or just before that, just a second. Females often choose the males with brilliant colors of an ornamentation, so in this struggle, animals with superior qualities will be favored and others eliminated. To explain the transmission of characters from generation to generation, Darwin proposed pangenesis theory in 1868. According to the theory of pangenesis, every somatic cell produces gemmules, and the actual germ cells are the sites of a collection of gemmules coming from different somatic cells. This theory has been completely discarded. Objections to Darwinism. It does not explain the adaptability of certain organs, the initial stages which are of use to the organism only in perfectly developed condition, example, protective, coloration, mimicry, electric organs of fishes, etc. It does not account for the occurrence of vestigial organs, overspecialization, antleration, antlers in Irish deers, tusks in mammoth, degeneration and regeneration in certain organs. It does not make any distinction between heritable and non-heritable variations. He referred mutations in the process of evolution as sports of nature. A species have evolved by natural selection of small and useful variations. A number of transitional forms must be met with, but such forms are not found in several cases. Sterility of hybrids, example mule, and the occurrence of neutral flowers and plants are not explained by the theory of natural selection. Mutation selection, mutation theory. The mutation theory was put forward in 1901 by Hugo de Vries, a Dutch botanist, to explain the mechanism of evolution. Features of mutation theory are: mutations form the raw material for evolution. Mutations appear accidentally and produce their effect immediately. Mutants are markedly different from the appearance, and there are no intermediate stages between the two. Same mutations can appear in several individuals of a species. Mutations can appear in all directions. All mutations have a genetic basis and are therefore inheritable. A single mutation may produce a new species. Natural selects beneficial mutations and eliminates lethal mutations. Evolution is a discontinuous or jerky process. The process of the plants on which de Vries had experiment was Enothera lamarckiana, evening primrose, and the mutation observed by de Vries in Enothera was chromosomal number variant. Mutations are discontinuous variations called spots. By Darwin and solitary variations by Bartison. Mutations are due to changes in chromosomes and genes or DNA. To be a successful event for evolution, mutation must occur in germplasm DNA. Mutations are the changes which may or may not be inherited. Synthetic theory. Tubansky, 1937, Origin of Species provided the initial basis for synthetic theory. Modern synthetic theory of evolution by Huxley in 1942, and there are very many propositions. The first three factors responsible for providing genetic variability, the last two are responsible for given directions in the evolutionary process. There are gene mutations, changes in chromosome structure and number, genetic recombination, natural selections, and reproductive isolation. Modern concept of evolution is a modification of Darwin's theory, genetic variation. Genetic variations form the raw material for evolution. The causes of genetic variation and environmental factors, including light, temperature, food, humidity, and genetic factors, migration, non-random mating, genetic drift, mutation, gene combination, hybridization. Removal of alleles from one population or addition of alleles into another population is called gene flow or gene migration. Non-random mating results in a deviation from the Hardy-Weinberg distribution. The Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium principle, which was proposed by J.H. Hardy and Weinberg in panel 1908, describes that under certain conditions of stability, allelic frequencies remain constant from generation to generation in asexually reproducing organisms. This means that if all other factors remain constant, the frequency of particular genes and alleles will remain constant. In the population through generation, this kind of stability of the genetic level is called genetic equilibrium. Hardy-Weinberg principle gives the geneticists a tool to determine whether evolution is occurring. Population geneticists use this principle to calculate the starting point allele frequency and then compare it to frequencies measured at some future time. In other words, evolution is a departure from Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Genetic drift is the change in number and frequency of genes in a small isolated population due to incentive inbreeding causing permanent fixation of some alleles, disappearance of a number of alleles, and a change in frequency of others. Genetic drift in a new colony is called founder effect because only a few founders carrying a small fraction of genetic variability of the parent population begin the colony. The theory of genetic drift was developed by geneticist Sewell Wright in 1930. It is also called Sewell-Wright effect or scattering of variability. Genetic drift always influences frequencies of alleles and is inversely proportional to the size of the population. Drastic short-term reduction of population size caused by natural disasters, disease, or predators may result in by chance of survivors representing only a small portion of the original gene pool. Even when the population increases to its original size, a portion of its original genetic diversity remains lost. This feature, termed a genetic bottleneck, is a problem with many endangered species. The bottleneck effect prevents most genotypes from participating in production of next generation. Mutation is the major source of genetic variation to alter the basic sequence of a gene. 3 types of mutations: genetic mutations, chromosomal aberrations, and chromosomal numerical mutations. Changes in the sequence of nucleotides and DNA, 3 types. And chromosomal aberrations, changes in structure of chromosomes, and in chromosomal numerical mutations, changes in the number of chromosomes. So in the first one, gene mutations, you have deletion, addition or insertion, substitution, replacements, transitions, transversions, and tautomerism. In chromosomal aberrations with change in structure of chromosomes, you have 4 types: deletion or deficiency, terminal, intercalary, duplicates, tandem, reverse, translocation, simple, reciprocal. Inversion is paracentric, pericentric. In chromosomal numerical mutations, changes in number of chromosomes, you have 2 types. One is aneuploidy, where you have gain or loss of 1 or 2 chromosomes. Hypoploidy, monosomy, nullosomy, hypoploidy, trisomy, and tetrasomy. Euploidy is gain or loss of 1 or more genomes. Hypoploidy, polyploidy, autopolyploidy, and allopolyploidy. Recombination is the process of bringing together new combinations of existing genes and alleles. Hybridization is a method of mixing the genes of 2 populations. It can occur by migration of a section of a population of a new place or by crossbreeding of man. By man, it changes the gene frequencies and alters the phenotypes of the offspring. Natural selection is a process of differential survival and reproduction that inevitably leads to changes in allele frequencies over time as those individuals who are the most fit survive and leave more offspring. Biologists recognize three major categories of natural selection based on its effect on the population over time: stabilizing selection, directional selection, and disruptive selection. Stabilizing or balancing selections leads to the elimination of organisms having overspecialized characters and maintains homogeneous population, which is genetically constant. It favors the average or near normal phenotypes, while eliminates the individuals with extreme expressions. For example, house sparrows killed in a severe snowstorm in New York were found to have wings markedly longer or shorter than the mean. In directional or progressive selection, the population changes towards one particular direction along with change in environment. As environment is undergoing a continuous change, the organisms have acquired new characters, survive, and others eliminated gradually. For example, industrial melanism. In this number of light-colored moths, best in Betillaria, decreased gradually, while that of the melon moths, Beta carbonaria, increased, showing directional selection. It provides a well-studied example of directional selection from nature. DDT-resistant mosquitoes, resistance of bacteria to drugs. Disruptive selections is a type of natural selection which favors extreme expression of certain traits to increase variance in a population. It breaks a homogeneous population into many adaptive forms. It results in balanced polymorphism. This kind of selection is rare and eliminates most of the members with mean expressions to producing two peaks in the distribution of a trait. Example. A clear example is the different beak sizes of the African fireball seed cracker finch, Pyrrhonestis ostrinus. Pyrrhonestis ostrinus. Right? Speciation of reproductive isolation. Speciation is the phenomenon a formation of new species from the pre-existing ones, especially as speciation is allopatric if new species develops from a spatially isolated population. Speciation is asympatric if new species develops from a segment of population. Breeding species is a group of organisms capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. Ecological species is a group of organisms sharing the same ecological niche. No two species can share the same ecological niche. Genetic species is a group of organisms showing close similarity in a genetic karyotype. Evolutionary species is a group of organisms sharing a unique collection of structural and functional characteristics. Phyletic speciation is a transformation of a species with the passage of time due to piling-up of variations. Gradual speciation is a slow transformation of an isolated population on populations into new species due to gradual accumulation of variations. Reproductive isolation is the segregation of the population of a species into smaller units or sections by certain mechanisms so as to prevent interbreeding among them and help in maintaining their heredity and integrity. Reproductive isolation between species may be maintained by one or more or several mechanisms collectively called premating isolating mechanisms or postmating isolating mechanisms. Premating isolating mechanisms include geographical, ecological, temporal, behavioral, mechanical, and postmating isolating mechanisms, including gametic incompatibility, hybrid inviability, and hybrid infertility. In geographic isolations, two populations of the same species are separated by some physical or geographic barriers, or they occupy different geographical areas. Now, climatic isolation, in the absence of any geographical barrier, the abrupt climatic differences within the range of distribution of a species are found to produce isolation of its members into units. Seasonal or temporal isolations. Differences in the breeding season prevent mating and interbreeding among the individuals of different populations or of different species. Habitat isolation or ecological or environmental isolation is caused due to differences in the habits and habitats of organisms, such as food and physiological requirements and place of living. Ethological isolation refers to the barriers to mating among the individuals of different species. Due to differences in their courtship behavior and mechanical isolation, the complex structure of genitalia in many animals does not permit copulation among different species. In physiological isolation, certain species are established only on the basis of some physiological differences developed between them. Gametic incompatibility is the inability of sperm from one species to fertilize eggs of another species. Hybrid inviability is the failure of a hybrid offspring of two different species to survive to maturity. Hybrid infertility is reduced to infertility, often complete sterility in hybrid offspring of two different species. Now, the types of isolation with cause and examples. Types of isolation would be mechanical isolation, with cause being difference in morphology of the female and of male genital organs. Mechanism include the inability of the sperm to bind to egg in animals or the female reproductive organs of a plant, preventing the wrong pollinator from landing. Examples would be insect-pollinated species. Behavioral isolation. As ethological isolation, behavioral differences in courtship, nest building, dancing, and stickleback fishes, closely related gray tree frog and pinewood tree frog. Seasonal isolation, differences in time of sexual maturity, breeding season, prevent mating and interbreeding, plants and invertebrates and insects are the examples. Gametic isolation due to external and internal fertilization, sea urchin. Genetic isolation include incompatibility, hybrid inviability, hybrid sterility, and hybrid breakdown. Mating inability, interspecific interbreeding. And mating inability, there are no examples. Interspecific interbreeding, we have Warwick and Berry, 1949, showed that the cross between goat and sheep produce normal embryos but they die much before birth. Interspecific sterility due to gene mutation in hybrid sterility. Male fail to reproduce. They are reproductively sterile, but otherwise healthy and vigorous. And hybrid breakdown, there's no specificity here. The examples of tetraploid species of Gossypium hirsutum. Examples produce fertile and vigorous F1 hybrids. Butane, F2 generation, the hybrids are inviable. Now, the next topic we have is polymorphism, right? Where Ford in 1984, defined polymorphism as the occurrence together in the same locality of two or more distinct forms of individuals in the same population. All species. Salient features of polymorphism are: it is due to the existence of more than two types of genotypes, different forms adapted to different types of environments. All Mendelian populations are polymorphic, increases the efficiency and exploitation of resources of the environment, helps the species to survive efficiently in a variety of environments. Type of polymorphism are balanced polymorphism and transient polymorphism. In balanced polymorphism, individuals with two or more forms morphs coexist in the same population of species in stable environment, show almost constant ratios. It means that in a population showing balanced polymorphisms, the same population, repeat that, individuals with two or more forms morphs coexist in the same population of a species in stable environment and show almost constant ratio. It means that in a population showing balanced polymorphism, the genotypic frequencies of various forms occur at equilibrium. There can be following reasons for this genetic equilibrium. This is a balance of selective forces so that no forms tend to be eliminated or both the alleles are maintained at appreciable frequencies in the population. Each form morph has a selective advantage of equal intensity. None of the forms have selective advantage over others. Heterozygotes are at a selective advantage, that is, heterozygote superiority. The rare or the rarest allelomorph is advantageous. As it becomes common, its advantage decreases and it is converted into a disadvantage. Examples of balanced polymorphism are sickle cell anemia, ABO blood group, Tay-Sachs disease, polymorphism in Hans-Lange and Drosophila polymorphs. And sickle cell anemia, in human beings, the person exhibiting sickle cell anemia have RBCs which become distorted and sickle-shaped in oxygen deficiency. The sickle-shaped RBCs are fragile and clog blood vessels, which leads to necrosis of various tissues and damage to organs. This causes severe anemia and heart failure. This disease was discovered by the American physicist James B. Herrick, 1904, who examined an anemic West Indian black student in Chicago. James B. Neal, 1940, established that sickle cell anemia is inherited as a simple Mendelian character. Normal hemoglobin is produced by two dominant genes, HbA and HB. I think there's a difference in the prefix. Let me just magnify it for you. It's almost the same, but the two dominant genes bar HbA, yeah. And persons heterozygous for these alleles, HbA and HB, small a, exhibit sickle cell trait, yeah. These have low capacity carrying oxygen, possess both kinds of hemoglobin nearly equal quantities. In normal human population, natural selection tends to eliminate gene HbA from the population, but A.C. Allison, 1959, found that frequency of gene HB small a is unusually high in areas prone to malaria in East Africa, where HB gene frequency reaches as high as 20% or more. Let's check that prefix again. I figure out it is HB small a. HB percent. I think it's corrected there. Yeah, that's 20% or more. In some African tribes, its frequency is as high as 40%. Allison, 1959, explained that hyperacute HB percent gene is due to selective advantage of heterozygotes. Right. Malaria-infested areas, sickle cell heterozygotes, or the carriers, are resistant to malarial infection, and are less infected with the parasite than the homozygous dominant non-sicklers. Thus, the heterozygotes have better chance of survival than the normal homozygotes. This advantage of heterozygotes results in stable polymorphism for gene HB percent. In West Africa, there is a third allelomorph, HBC, which produces another abnormal hemoglobin C. The homozygote HBC by HBC suffers from severe anemia, similar to HB percent by HB percent. Heterozygotes of this HB percent by HB percent, HBC, also suffer from anemia, but heterozygote HbA and HbC are at an advantage over homozygotes HbC and HbC. The above two cases strongly support the view that the polymorphism by HB gene is maintained by natural selection in malaria-infested areas. Now, the ABO blood groups in human population, the existence of A, B, AB, and O blood groups are also examples of balanced polymorphism. Persons of blood group O have a greater life expectancy than those of other blood groups, but are prone to duodenal ulcer. Tay-Sachs disease. This disease is common in children of Jewish heritage because 1 out of 40 Jewish persons is a heterozygote, where 1 out of 380 non-Jewish persons is a heterozygous carrier. This is because the grandchildren of persons suffering Tay-Sachs disease were resistant to pulmonary tuberculosis in Bethesda, Maryland. The incidence of Jewish tuberculosis patients from Eastern Europe is relatively high. This finding indicates that the heterozygous carrier of Tay-Sachs disease is resistant to pulmonary tuberculosis. Polymorphism in Lansale, Kane, Corey, and Shepard, 1954. I think it is the snail. I hope it's right. Yeah, it's a land snail. There's a spelling mistake there. The Capia memoralis, that is studied balanced polymorphism in common land snail, Capia sepia memoralis. Their shells exhibit polymorphism in color and band patterns. The color polymorphism in these snails is maintained by selection, and the selective force is predation. These snails are predated upon by thrushes, and the visually conspicuous forms were at a disadvantage. In areas with uniform background, like grasslands or woodlands with decaying leaves, the unbanded pink, yellow, and brown shells of single-banded shells are particularly common because of selective advantage. In areas with tangled and mottled ground over cover as in rough pasture or hedgerows, the dark-banded shells had a selective advantage. Yellow shells with the 5 bands were common among the rough green herbage. The less green was the background, the less were the number of yellow shells. The Drosophila polymorpha, the population of D. polymorpha, presents 3 types of coloration of the abdomen. These are light color, dark color, and intermediate color. The light color is due to recessive genes and as in homozygous state, and dark color due to homozygous dominant genes AA. The heterozygous with intermediate color are almost abundant. It means heterozygous flies have some adaptive advantage. Balanced polymorphism is important in evolution because it permits variability in the population. This variability helps the population to react rapidly to an environmental change and to avoid extinction or to pave way to original species. This balanced polymorphism represents stabilizing selection. And the next will be transient polymorphism, which is found in populations undergoing a strong selection pressure and one form of or morph is being strongly favored and the other is getting eliminated. Thus, transient polymorphism lasts for a short period because polymorphism exists till the disadvantageous form is either completely eliminated or is reduced to such a low frequency that it is not retained due to recurrent mutation. Industrial melanism is a peppered moth. Biston betuluria is an example of transient polymorphism. Up to 1848, peppered moths found in and around Manchester were creamy white with black dots and darkly shaded areas. These were called non-melanic forms. In 1848, a single black-colored moth appeared among non-melanic forms. The black or melanic form arose by a recurring random mutation. The non-melanic forms were able to successfully camouflage with the lichens while resting and were able to survive, while the melanic forms were easily spotted out and preyed upon and were eliminated. As a result of rapid industrialization in Great Britain, large amounts of soot and other gases were poured into the atmosphere. These were deposited into the environment, making it sooty and dark, and destroyed the lichens. Thus, polymorphism in peppered moths was only for a short period and favored strong selection. The transient polymorphism is seen during directional selection, where one form of character is gradually replaced by another. And that is the end of this subject here. And of this topic of theories of evolution. Read through, and whatever be your doubts, please put them in the comment section. I'll answer those your queries and give you clarifications for the same. In the meanwhile, note the keywords, get to know understand the topic properly, read them and check them for MCQ sections, right? And it should do good. Read through each of the chapters given to you. I wish you all the best, and I will have a Q&A section for every week. And even otherwise, when you have any questions or queries, send them across. I'll give you the necessary explanations as and when required. Or if you're in urgency, you're preparing for an exam, you have some doubts, do feel free to send me an email, or you can get back to me on my WhatsApp, and I'll answer your queries. Best wishes, and do the best. I'll be on with the next chapter, next topic in a couple of minutes from now.